all the steps in a setup or changeover reduction, separating internal and external activities may in fact be the most important as well as the simplest steps you can take. In the most general sense, performing activities like preparing tools, kits, and materials, as well as transporting items while your line is running, can reduce setup time by as much as 50%. As a reminder, internal tasks are those tasks that can only be performed while the machine is stopped. External tasks, on the other hand, can be performed while a machine is running. When we look to differentiate between the two, we are trying to separate work elements or tasks into a group of internal and external tasks. There are many different tasks that can be performed before a machine is stopped. Let's take a look at our IndyCar for a few common examples. Some of the more obvious ones that occur here are lining people up and positioning them at a level that reduces motion, preparing wheels or other parts before the car is stopped, organizing and preparing tools before the car is stopped, situating equipment, tools, and parts as close as possible to reduce excessive forms of waste, and using proper equipment. While these obvious examples may seem quite simple and logical, the reality of an everyday setup is that it may not occur this way. Review your Gemba notes, watch your video, and take another look at your value stream. You will more than likely find that many of the external activities are being performed after the machine has been stopped. If so, you may have an opportunity to reduce 50% of your setup time right away. How do we do this? As implied earlier, we need to separate the activities into our setup into internal and external activities. There are three commonly used methods to do this: use of checklists, performing regular function checks, and reducing transportation waste, specifically with tooling and parts required. Let's take a look at each of these in our upcoming sections so that we can understand how these tools will help you separate internal and external activities. Got it. Got it? Yep. Oh, I forgot that one. In this lecture, we will look at one tool that you can use to ensure you have everything you need to reduce your setup or changeover time. A checklist is a tool that can be used to ensure that you have everything required to set up and run your next operation. There is no standard format for a checklist as long as it works appropriately and can be standardized. The following are common items that you can use to outline or develop a checklist. Just be sure that you adapt your list to your needs. Parts needed, tools needed, specifications, and workers. You will also want a section to list appropriate conditions for work, such as temperature, pressure, power, skill set, and any other necessary conditions. Another suggestion is to have a section for correct calibration, measurements, and dimensions at each operation. As a reminder, checklists will be unique to your specific needs, so be sure to customize and benchmark other best practices. One suggestion is to Google checklist examples and take a look at a few different options. This type of benchmarking may spark some great ideas. Be sure to cite your references. Let's look at an example of a checklist. Please note that this template is available if you would like to try it out. If you do use a sample checklist, be aware that each machine and operation checklist should be made specific to that machine and operation's needs. Checklists that are generalized can cause confusion and result in slower times if not used properly. Also, keep in mind that this is a pre-changeover checklist, which means items and activities on the checklist should be performed externally before a machine is stopped. In this example, we see examples of each of the suggested categories and an added one that documents who the checklist was completed by. To use the list, an employee would simply go through and gather each of the categories and confirm them with a check mark. As you can see, this checklist also has a notes column to add additional information if needed. As you can see, a checklist is one of the easiest ways to ensure you have every item needed for your changeover in a simple list of everything. Checklists can be implemented with software or a pencil and paper. The only thing you need to make sure is that you check using a checklist off of your list of things to do. Much like a checklist will help confirm if you have the appropriate items, machines, and parts, and that they are in the proper working order, a function check or functional test will help you measure the ability of your equipment to perform and work as it should. It is suggested that a function check is done before and after a run when you first start conducting the function check. This will ensure that the items you need to work are working properly. Once you have your function checks occurring on a schedule, many organizations will perform the check immediately after a run. This way, if tooling, materials, or information needs to be corrected, it can be done well in advance of the next run and stored safely so that it is in working order for the next time it needs to be used. If it is not practical for you to advance to a functional test immediately after the setup is broken down, then ensure they are done well in advance of your changeover so as to minimize any downtime. Function checks are oftentimes developed using checklists, process flow diagrams, or decision maps. These tools help standardize the function check and will allow you to develop a process that could drastically improve your setup or changeover times. Gauges, tools, dies, molds, clamps, parts, materials, and other items needed for a setup operation are moved to and from a work area when a changeover occurs. This can cause excessive amounts of transportation, motion, and other forms of waste if tooling is not placed in an easily accessible location that is in 5S condition. If this is performed during the internal setup time or the time when the machine is stopped, downtime will be much longer. With this in mind, any and all items needed for a changeover should be placed in a location that is easily accessible for the person performing the setup operation. If placing items in an easily accessible location is not a possibility, then items should be transported to the machine before the machine is shut down, and from the machine after the line is back up and running, or by another resource. The purpose of this is to get the machine up and running as quickly as possible and reduce downtime. These three techniques will help you begin separating internal and external activities. Please note that this may require coordinating, lining up, or deeper analysis, but Rest assured, as you identify and separate internal and external activities, you will see that your downtime will be reduced and your value adding time will increase.